I understand that King Alfred the Great had a cause for canonization in England until the Anglican schism under Henry VIII. You know anything in Alfred's life that might demonstrate his sanctity?
Yes, indeed I do. That was his enforcement of religious observance, his personal religious observance, and his work for the church, both in terms of education, diocesan structure, and all that. He was a very similar character in some ways to Charlemagne. Now, the other thing about him is that some treat him as a blessed already. As you say, his cause for canonization, per se, was derailed by the Reformation. But we can only hope that someday it gets picked up again.
Okay. I mean, so it's kind of a long time, enough time has elapsed. I mean, it's surprising that just
well, I mean, he had a local cultus. People began to venerate him as a saint almost as soon as he died.
Wow.
And that was pretty common up until the Reformation. Interesting enough, the Orthodox in England venerate him as a saint, claiming that since he lived before 1054 and he was a holy man, he's one of theirs.
I see. So you still need that energy to sort of get things going.
Yeah.
The canonization. So that sounds like a good one to create a society for.
Oh yeah, the Society of Alfred the Great for that end. And they just found recently what may be his relics. You know how they found Richard III's body?
I forgot.
A couple of years ago, they found Richard III who'd been killed at Bosworth Field. They had a big solemn interment of him at Leicester Cathedral. Well, they found relics, bones that they think are probably Alfred's.
Isn't that strange that a king's bones are just lying out somewhere? And
Well,
I mean, is that...
not really. See, what happened, remember that when these guys would die, they would get put into, they were generally buried in monasteries. Like with Richard III, he was buried in a Franciscan monastery. They didn't want to bury him in Westminster Abbey or Windsor, because that would be implying that he was a rightful king. And remember, that was what that Civil War, the War of the Roses, was about.
Okay.
Over which of them were the rightful monarch. So, House of Lancaster was extinct, but their cousins, the House of Tudor, take up the fight. Henry VII wins, kills Richard III. Well, he's not going to bury him with the other kings of England, but he's got to put someplace. So he's put in this Franciscan house. That house was suppressed when Henry VIII suppressed the monasteries. And as it so happened, eventually they built a car park on top of where the church had been. And it was when they were going through the car park that they found his grave. Well, similarly, when Alfred the Great died, he ended up at a place called Hyde Abbey. And with the dissolution of the monasteries, Hyde was destroyed. There was some work done on the area in the 19th century. And they found some bones, which they stored in a cupboard in some museum somewhere. And now they have reason to think that those are Alfred's bones.
I mean, I guess it's just sort of surprising that it's not documented, or it's not like a tourist place or a place that people visit, like, oh, here's King Alfred's bones.
You would think so, but you got to bear in mind, number one, that there's an awful lot of that kind of stuff over there.
So a lot of competition.
I mean, gosh, there are kings and saints and shrines and churches and cathedrals everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Remember that with us here in California, we're excited over the missions.
Okay.
Which are the biggest thing we've got in terms of Catholic history.
Yeah, that's for sure.
They're 200 years old. That's nothing. You go to Europe, every district has been there for over 1,000 years.
Wow.
And there's just a ton of stuff. I know, and for Augustine, who's English, by the way, I actually know him personally.
Mm-hmm.
I know this will sound very silly and naive to your ears, but believe me, one of the biggest differences between Americans and Europeans, including the English despite Brexit, is the time scale and also the space. If you're right, in the sense that if a figure analogous to Alfred the Great were here, we would know all about him.
Yeah.
But that's because there's so little for him to compete with. I mean, we only had 250 years.
Yeah.
Whereas over there, my heavens, it's just chock-a-block with kings and princes and saints.
They're a dime a dozen.
Yeah, pretty much. So, you know, but at any rate, to answer your question, you know, I think it would be a prime candidate for somebody to start a society, to begin putting out prayer cards, trying to get miracles, etc. And then, if it goes anywhere, getting one of the dioceses to propose him for canonization, or to have his cultus regularized. Remember that a lot of individuals like Charlemagne, who had a pre-existing cultus before, instead of going through the regular canonization process, the Holy See simply confirms the cultus and calls them blessed.
What does that mean? Regularize. So what are the benefits? I don't understand.
Well, I mean, the benefits are there's simply no question that the individual belongs on the calendar. In other words, if someone's cultus is regularized, it means that Rome has recognized it as a valid cultus. And so you have specific prayers, you can say masses in his honor, and so on.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if someone is not at least a blessed, you can't really offer prayers in their honor.
Oh.
You can offer requiems for them if you like, but you can't offer prayers in their honor.
Okay.
Except privately. That's how every servant of God starts out. The problem, of course, with the canonization for a figure like Alfred is that it's so far back.
Yeah.
What you really would have to depend upon was the level of devotion that was already existing to him back when. And then, again, as I say, it would be a question of the Holy See regularizing the cultus. So.
Okay.